Bulavinaka, Fiji, and welcome to Gold FM Speak Your Mind. And this afternoon, I'm gladly joined by the Permanent Secretary for Women, Social Welfare and Poverty Alleviation. Welcome to the show, Dr. Korumeta.
Thank you, Pedeli.
And also, a familiar voice on Gold FM, the Director for Women, Arieta Moreira. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pedeli.
Now, I'm going to start off with, an event very important to the calendar for the Ministry for Women, and that is the National Women's Expo. And is to begin shortly. Mm-hmm. And, what's this initiative by the government? What's the main focus or main reason why we have an expo for women?
Thank you, Pedeli. Pedeli, if I may start with government's priorities. Government's priorities are, one, social inclusion to ensure women, the formerly marginalized, traditionally marginalized populations are included in the country's economy. But more importantly, also increasing livelihoods for our population, in particular our rural people, to bring them into the mainframe of business. So the expo started last year by, one, really just celebrating the talents of Fijian women, rural women, looking at the handicrafts that they do, labor on tirelessly at home, bringing them to to Suva to sell. Now this year, what we're doing is, the aim is to connect the artisans, their products, to potential markets. So it's really to fulfill government's aims of increasing livelihoods and alleviating poverty in families. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's really good, because in previous events by various other ministries, they'd have a small space perhaps dedicated to the handicraft of women. Yeah. And it's great that this has been taken on as... How large an expo are we to expect for this year?
For this year?
Yeah, this year.
This year. Last year, I'll start with last year because that's we used that as our benchmarker. We brought in some 2,000 women from all around, in particular rural maritime Fiji, to bring their products in. We took a lot of lessons learned from last year. We found the products were, you had the extremely, top quality products, you had the shoddy ones. So what we decided was, learning the lessons from last year, what we would do was start to roll out training for the women. One was financial literacy training. Two was skills training to improve the quality of the products. For those that were making pickled jams and pickled fruits, we brought in Ministry for Health to help them learn how to pickle them properly and bottle them and label them, really to prepare them for the domestic market, what people in Suva would buy and what we would potentially want to market. And so what we did this year, after rolling out the training, we then had divisional craft shows. We've held 8 throughout Fiji in all the 4 divisions. Now the winners from those craft shows will be coming to Suva next week, 600 women, some 150 women per division. These are the winners from the divisional craft shows that will be coming in next week. So a good percentage of them have been working with Fiji Arts Council and the Ministry of Industry and Trade to get the Fijian-made brand. And so these are women that we know instantly they will be connecting to markets. They're willing buyers. We're bringing retailers to the expo to look at the potential for products that could go on their shelves. We've got Tapus, Jacks, MHs, Courts coming to the expo. They're also sponsoring certain aspects of the expo. So we have the business community that have been very much partnering with us to help connect women's products, rural women's products to potential markets.
And now obviously with this, an expo of this size would also need a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And how much money has been put aside for Women's Expo?
Government allocated $500,000 for this year's expo. The 8 divisional expos have taken a certain percentage of that, because what happened for all the divisional expos, we paid for women to come to the centers. We paid for their fares, their transportation, their accommodation, their meals. So close to 200,000 has gone into that. Now the balance of that, in addition to what the other sponsors will give us, will bring in the 600. These 600 plus women that are coming, I think close to 700, their fares are paid, their accommodation here is paid for, their meals. So it's really a full scholarship, so to speak, for them. To come to Suva and showcase. And, we have Indonesian potential buyers coming in. They're coming in as part of the Indonesian delegation. We have the the retailers that I spoke about earlier. And, we're on the media, we're on social media, international media as well. So, there's so much potential that will be linked to these women. The challenge will be after the expo, the markets that'll open, the consistency and the quality of the products. But we have a lot of faith in our women. I think they're really on the ball now.
Now, especially that particular point that you mentioned, after the expo and having that faith in the women, how much support in terms of how the business, developing the business skills for these women? Are this training being implemented? Is that part of also what
we have a memorandum of understanding with Westpac, and Westpac Bank staff have really gone out as far as, the Lao Group, Kandavu, Lomai Viti, up in the interior parts of Viti Level and Wano Level, running financial literacy and business basics training for these women. So we're getting the partners with the relevant expertise to provide training. We've had Fiji Arts Council go out, show the women the kind of weaving, the finishing touches that need to be done on the products to meet the domestic and export market. Ministry for Health officials talking to the women about food preservation, food packaging, labeling. So, these are all government agencies, so government, it's not only through the funding of the ministry, but also government funding through the other line ministries, that's going out to assist these women.
It's quite a huge task, and it's a full-on year-round. I don't think the Fiji public fully grasp that this is, when you talk about divisional craft shows, then culminating with the official expo in October, you'll definitely have this again next year? Is this something that we're looking at?
Yes, we're looking at that as an annual event. It'll really depend on, the budgetary allocation. But I think if last year's success saw us getting this year's budget, and we're hoping that this year's success will influence, the powers that be to continue to support it. But I think the women also really have to show, front up and meet us halfway and show us they're worth the investment. Yes.
Well, thank you again for that, really succinct look at the Women's Expo. That is, again, the dates for the expo is
14th to 16th of October, because you have the World Rural Women's Day falling in between on the 15th of October. So that's what we're celebrating as well.
Right.
Thank you.
We'll continue to chat more about the Women's Expo and also the initiatives of the Women's Ministry for Women right after this. And I need a glass of water on Gold FM Speak Your Mind. Welcome back to Gold FM Speak Your Mind, and we're speaking of the Women's Expo, the National Women's Expo, and looking at the theme, connecting women to markets, make it happen. Now, there are activities that are being planned during the expos. So let's have a look at that, if I may ask. What are the planned activities and how are you going to be connecting? Well, we've spoken briefly about how to connect these markets, but looking at the specific program that you have set for this few days.
Thank you, Pedeli. Now, it'll be like a fair, a big marketplace. So the vendors, the potential markets, they're welcome to walk in and out. We will have an official opening on the Wednesday, and so they will be part of that official opening. They'll be invited to do a walkthrough. After that, they're welcome to walk in and see the products and decide what they want to buy. Now, as per the program for the 3 days, on the stage, there'll be various workshops run with different themes. So on the first day, the theme is accessing freedom and justice. A big part of that will be our male advocacy program. We have our gender advisor who will be running a workshop using male advocates, men who have been gender sensitized. There will be a workshop on stage where there will also be a panel discussion really talking about the role that men can play in combating gender-based violence. And for that, I will ask the PS later to talk about that. But just let me run through the program. Okay. The other things happening, as I said earlier, we will have a delegation from Indonesia. There will be a tent manned by the Indonesian embassy here that will be providing training in batik making. There will also be batik for sale. They will also be part of the fashion show. Part of the program includes a fashion show on the second night. We will have, Indonesian, fashion, but also I believe the team have been very active on the fashion blog, getting potential, fashion designers, upcoming budding fashion designers, to come in and showcase their products. So that's part of the program. We will have a cultural entertainment night. Westpac, being a major sponsor, will have their own tent running their financial literacy and their business basics training. That's happening all throughout the 3 days. So if people are interested in that, look for the Westpac tent, go along to that. We will also have our staff doing the rocket stove assembling. Part of our work around the gender and climate change mitigation is really going out into communities and helping women develop rocket stove, which reduces the use of firewood by some 75%. That was run last year, very successful, so we're running that again this year. We are getting one of the women that went to India to train in 2012, one of the 10 grandmothers. One of the ladies is coming in. She'll have a tent as well to run workshops on how these solar, apparatus is put together. What we're really trying to showcase, you don't necessarily have to be a university graduate to be able to build resilience within your community. Rural women are very much a part of building resilient communities, and we're showcasing the talent that they have. So those are some of the workshops we will be running for the women throughout the 3 days. And so there will be signs, there will be, tents allocated to that. I would like PS to talk a bit more about the gender advocacy program we are, launching there.
That's definitely an interesting scope of looking at gender-based violence and how to, target our population, especially our men in Fiji, yeah?
Yeah, thank you. I must appreciate from the ministry perspective for giving us this space. I think for too long, Fijian women have waited for violence to stop, have waited to be recognized, have waited to be paid the due attention they need, and also for the due support, basically for the empowerment, and also to see them contribute powerfully to national development. And the country is often known by how it looks after its women. And I think to date now, the opportunity to do it is right here now. And the Fijian government has been very bold and very open about its mandate and policies about giving that space for women in our countries. And if you look at gender, I think it's commonly believed that it's just a women's issues. Gender is both men and women. And gender is fairly enshrined in the constitution of our land. And it basically includes, the gender expression and also gender identity. And when we talk about violence against women, it's basically a symptom of manifestation of gender inequality. That's bold to say. And this Women's Expo provides a golden opportunity where we build up male champions who can advocate for gender, and basically who can propagate change mindsets or belief systems, for that matter, so that our women are given the due recognition. And we talk about, there's often talk about masculinity, superiority of man over women, and this, in a nutshell, are basically beliefs that has been implanted on us. We've acquired it in our upbringing, and generations after generation have actually propagated it. But we are in a very pristine position now in Fiji to change it. And this is why we have initiated this male advocacy, basically to change male mindsets towards women. And we have to do it in a powerful way, and we have to do it basically to targeting men in leadership positions, men in the civil service, men in the various networks and organizations, so that we are able to have a visual difference in how our women are being looked after. The National Women's Expo gives the space to the women. And because we know that women takes what it takes. Women makes things happen. Mm-hmm. Women are the best agents of change. And when things don't happen in a community, often communities look often to women, because they are the ones that came in to make the change, basically, and they get the results. And so when you're looking at achievements at community, at families, you see the powerful avenue that the women does contribute. So, but we need to instill in our men a new system through gender sensitization, basically to transform them. And when we talk about gender, we do know that it's a very uncomfortable, very provoking issue to talk about amongst men. But it helps when you start to openly talk about it. And this is an avenue to do it. It's a start of a new wave. We have to propagate it carefully, but also in a very progressive manner to ensure that it transcends, from the leaders down to grassroots. Mm.
Well, that's definitely, it's great to hear that the Permanent Secretary for Women has actually said this because, for quite too often, we've often wondered, what other approach that we look at in terms from our counterparts from women looking at the men in our society,
Yes.
specifically Fiji and Pacific societies. So this is a bold step indeed. And we'll chat a little bit more right after this short break. We seem to be running out of time really quickly too, right here on Gold FM Speak Your Mind. Welcome back to Gold FM Speak Your Mind, and the discussion of Women's Expo, the National Women's Expo, the second to be held and organized by the Ministry for Women and Social Welfare and Poverty Alleviation. And in studio, I have the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Josefa Correa-Bueta, and also the Director for Women, Arieta Modeida. Now, just before we headed into the break, the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Correa-Bueta, you succinctly put it in words that only you could have put in. But the target of having male champions for especially gender-based violence. Now, with that, how has this been implemented by the ministry?
Thank you, Pedeli. Let's start with the laws that we have that give us the ground or the philosophical base to run this. We have the Constitution that guarantees full protection. We have the National Gender Policy. Now, out of that, we have a gender advisor that's been kindly given to us by the Australian government to help us with the implementation of the National Gender Policy. Oftentimes we get wonderful policies, but there's no HR within the ministries. We have our own annual corporate plans to deliver on. You need somebody that really has paying attention to all the goals and the targets within the policy to develop an implementation plan. So we now have a gender advisor. We've broken down the policy aims into 159 targets, I think, and activities. Now, first off for us is running awareness around the national gender policy for the permanent secretaries. That's been held on the 29th of this month, and that is really going to be a precursor for us to the 16 days of activism, which will start on the 25th of November. Now, within the 16 days of activism, there's a whole series of activities been planned. We are grateful to UN Women, UNDP, and the Australian government and SPC RRRC. There's funding being promised by them. We're actually meeting this afternoon to really plan the programs. Part of it will be training, gender-based violence training for members of parliament, and that was asked, members of parliament asked the Honourable Minister for Women for that. So we will be providing that with the funding of the funders that I've mentioned earlier. There will be training also for women leaders in the public service, really just understanding their role as women leaders. There's also planned some gender-based violence training for church leaders. We met faith-based leaders last week, and it's something they felt was important for them, so that there's a general similar understanding around why violence happens and their role in helping, prevent it. So that's part of the plan for, building up the cadre of male leaders. Now, within that, there will be a series of workshops also for various levels within the public service. So you're looking at about a year-long activity to really build up the cadre of leaders.
These are really exciting times to hear of this. It's the first time that if I can remember having parliament members or members of parliament actually requesting for gender-based training, and also with the training of trainers. I was going to ask, specifically in terms of how else it's going to infiltrate itself down to the rural, the grassroots level. But you've mentioned faith-based, involving the faith-based leaders, and it's an important aspect that many tend to not see as important, but we are of that community where everyone is a member of a church, everyone is a member of a religion,
Yes.
and head into. So these are also really important bridges that and linkages that the ministry is making. So I'm just in awe, and I commend you for the work that you've done as far. And well, these are plans also for the year. Apart from these, what else are we looking at for in terms of the work that the Ministry for Women are going to be looking at for the coming year?
We're using the National Gender Policy and the Women's Plan of Action as our overarching documents, or as our Bible, so to speak, that guide our work. We will continue the women in leadership training. Now, women in equal participation of women in leadership training. Now, that's been rolled out with the partnership with SPC RRRT. They have started the training for us, and this is really going down to the communities, the district level. We've had one in the Central Division and one in the Western Division, where we brought in women advisory counselors, just really women community leaders. They might not necessarily have the titles that we'd like them to have, but we know they're movers and shakers, and just giving them some basics in how to manage committee meetings, how to run committees, and these are basics that we often overlook when we talk about women in leadership or women in at decision-making tables. There are skills that we need to build along the way. We don't just clamor for the numbers. We look at how we've helped them, and we believe the ministry has a real strong role in helping building those skills in women at the community level. Yeah.
Now, with all this, again, I'm going to. It comes down to the the work that will enable you comes down to the money, and in terms of that, I'm going to ask, in areas of focus for the ministry, how has it been for this year, 2015?
I think we are very happy. Our focus was not on the additional funding, but we basically looked at what is wastage in the ministry and how we can effectively utilize what we've been allocated to do a good job that we are trusted into. And we looked at smart initiatives. We look at creative opportunities basically to do that. And we look at involvement of other partners. You mentioned about faith-based organization. We also have a number of United Nations agencies that were willingly come on board, basically because they saw the issues on the ground. And they saw that we had, the government had actually put in a priority about reaching out, taking the services out to the people. And that was one common platform or playground that we all came in together. And I think that is the key issue right now. In a ministry such as ours, it's a way to go, basically to take services out to the people. Because you're dealing with communities who are not accessible, you're dealing with a disadvantage, who are either because of geography or because of financial constraints that doesn't allow them. And, when you take out the services out to the people, then you really realize there's a much, much bigger need. And you really can make a difference on the ground level. And not only that, you can have a very good sense what the community issues are. Yeah, I think sitting at the top and just listening from here can be a very misguided, to what's the reality on the ground. And our ministry really believes in that way, that we need to be on the ground, to live with the people, feel with them, and because it's a people's directed ministry. And what are the critical issues? It also helps us to strategize. Based on the changing landscape that we have right now. The issue about the National Women's Expo and the programs has been factored into it. Basically, was to address the issues that we have right now. We live in a changing social landscape. There's no doubt about it. When you look at all the cohorts of life, look at women, girls, the children, preschool, and even in primary schools, the landscape has changed. And therefore, we need to be on top of things, and we need to strategize accordingly. But the big advantage that we have now is that we are given the mandate by the government, to pursue women's empowerment, to look at gender, build up capacities and strength, and we had to do it. It's not the issue about, increased funding. It's the issue about working smartly. That's what I believe. And I think for what we have been provided with 2015, we have managed to gain a good mileage. I think we have managed to get some positive achievements into gender implementation, and obviously the gender, when you're looking at gender work, we have a work plan set out, and we've got set targets that will be measured with, and the issue about monitoring. So come in 2015, our big issue was actually looking at assessing how effective our programs, policies have been, and the monitoring and evaluation. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kuribueta. And we'll head into another short break here on Gold FM Speak Your Mind. Well, if you do have comments, feel free to also send us a text on 825, put the letter G before it, or call us up in studio 3220-906 and 3220-907. You're back on Gold FM, Speak Your Mind, and here with the Permanent Secretary for Women and Social Welfare and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Josefa Kuribueta, and also Director for Women, Arieta Modeida, and speaking about the upcoming National Women's Expo. But not only that, we've also looked at various other activities of the Ministry for Women. Now, with the National Women's Expo, besides the monitoring of the women that participate in these at the expo, this is the second time that the Ministry for Women have held this. Now, how are you going to look at ways to help these women and ensure that the knowledge that they learn from these expos or get from these expos are distributed amongst the different communities?
Okay, what's happened is this year I talked about the 8 divisional and district craft shows.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the winners that have come out of that, we have been keeping track of them. We already have coming into the headquarters now the list of these women, the products they're bringing. Now, straight after their divisional craft show, they weren't just left on their own. They've been followed, they've been tracked, they've been monitored. We've had our staff go back and say, listen, Fiji Arts Council told you to make sure your weaving's like this, make sure it's like that, so that it meets the market demands. Now, there's a list that's gone out to the divisional officers to ensure, this particular woman has won on the basis of her, traditional baskets. We want to know how many baskets she's bringing. And our staff are already, there's been training offered to our staff on how to price, in the ranges of prices. Fiji Arts Council has provided the training to the ministry staff. So they advise the women, okay, you can pitch it within this range to this range. So when they come, we have their list. Even before the expo starts, when they arrive here in Suva, we will get their list of products. We know how many mats, how many baskets or sasas or bottles of oil they're bringing. We have a rough estimate of how much they could possibly make, given the range of the prices, the lowest they can go and the highest they can go. And they've been advised you will not go lower than that. Because what we're telling them is, if you had to pay for your way to come here, we need to make sure your products will make it worth your while, that you can cover your cost and make a little bit of profit. So that's what's been drummed into the women. So there's been a lot of the training that's been going on with them. So we have a fair idea of how much they're going to make through the expo to take back. There's people here, there's the Westpac, as I've talked about, there's the financial inclusion program, there's a whole lot of service providers that'll take their contacts. We will follow up with them afterwards. We've put so much money, invested so much money in these women. We're not just going to bring them and after the expo, bye-bye, goodbye, go home. No, we're going to follow up to ensure, the income generating, funds for our livelihoods project next year will go into how we strengthen their business arm, the businesses, the little businesses for these women, to ensure that they continue to, to be able to produce quality products and also consistently. So it's a commitment by the ministry.
Obviously, you're also working with a lot of the provincial councils and many of these women that you also see at these expos, And what other? Apart from the winners from the divisional expos that you've had, the craft shows, what of the other women, the general public that come? Are they still? Is there an opportunity for them to also display certain wares?
The workshops are open to them. We have to be fair. These women that have won through the divisional craft show have really had to work hard for that. It wouldn't be fair on them for us to then just open up to 200 women to come in and showcase products that we haven't vetted. The Fiji Arts Council hasn't vetted for quality. It's about connecting to markets. We're into quality control now. But other women are very welcome to come and attend the workshops. Attend the Fiji Arts Council workshops, the financial literacy workshops. Come and talk to the staff, talk to the people there, potential traders as to, how they can be involved next year. If there's, products that they're producing at home, they want some advice on how they can better that so that they meet, they can come to the expo next year. That facility is available. We'll have FERCA there that'll be able to give them their FERCA cards. There'll be other government agencies. So we're really bringing government agencies also to the expo, so that these rural women have a one-stop shop there.
That's really great, because a lot of these questions also arise when they arrive, how they set up their businesses and what other requirements that they are often not too sure of. Now, with
Pedeli,
this,
before you ask the next question, I would like to mention here, the government through the Ministry of Industry and Trade has been giving out grants to individual potential SME,
right, yes.
90% of those recipients are women, and those grants have been assessed purely based on merit, on the merit of their project proposals. So you have a government that's really committed to increasing livelihoods in communities, but also valuing the worth of women. And so those women might turn up to the expo and say, listen, we need some assistance with this. We are very willing to help them. Yeah.
That's a really great percentage to hear. I mean, based all solely on the projects, you also say, and 90% women. And hopefully we see many of them also at the expo if they're tuned in this afternoon. But I was also going to ask, with the other stakeholders that you have engaged at the expo, how, before this, they've obviously committed themselves to the expo and the goals of the expo. How else has the ministry and working with the stakeholders, you will continue to work together in terms of having provide some more of these spaces for potential help for the women of our country?
I've talked about Westpac. They will continue their financial literacy training. CC has offered floor space for the winners, or I think the top 2 winners of the expo, to showcase for about 3 months. I mean, those spaces cost money.
That costs a lot of money.
They're giving us that space. We've got in NCSMED, the National Center for Small and Micro Enterprise Development. They're willing to give us space for products that might not necessarily sell at the expo, but the women are willing to leave behind and sell there. So we've got these partners that are very willing to keep the products. In terms of another important partnership, I would like the PS to speak about the REACH project. That's UNDP, Japanese government, because that's another big element that we're bringing into the expo. So the REACH
We'll take another short break here on Gold FM Speaker Mind, then we'll come back to the Permanent Secretary to highlight the REACH project. And feel free to also send in your comments on goldfm@mbc.com.fj. Well, interesting discussions have continued here on Gold FM Speak Your Mind. I'm getting to learn a little bit more also of the scope of the work put behind, not only in terms of looking at an expo from a product and product placement and trying to get marketing and getting marketed at the expo, but also the objectives and the real objectives behind the National Women's Expo, the second of which is about to be held, and the dates again, the 14th to the 16th of October. And I have the Permanent Secretary for Women, Social Welfare and Poverty Alleviation in studio, and also the Director for Women. And now, just before the break, we talked a little about the REACH project. Now, could you just tell us a little bit more about this particular project?
Yes, thank you, Pedeli. I think people may be wondering why. The REACH project is basically a Japanese-funded project through the United Nations Development Program for Fiji, and specifically for the ministry, and it's a sum of 2.6 USD million, and it's over 3 years, and basically to enhance the access of the public to services like social justice, to women's program, to the ministerial programs in that regard. So basically it involves a a packed program whereby we're transporting people, we're transporting information, we're transporting services, we're transporting experts to the marginalized communities right throughout Fiji. And the platform to do this was in the form of 3 mobile buses. So there will be legal practitioners on board the bus, there will be social welfare practitioners, there will be child protection officers, there will be women interest officers. So we taking, and it's never been done before. And this is a very unique package because, and we know that access to justice is something of a disadvantage when you look at the maritime, when you look at the disadvantaged communities. So this is the avenue whereby they get very first-hand information from the experts. There's a pilot going on right now. So there will be one bus for the north, one for the central, and one for the west. And these are very convertible bus. They are very high class, high quality bus through the program. And a major component of the project basically is the procurement of these buses. So this is the key intention of the program. And basically, the government is very keen, to take the services out from, the offices, the lovely comforts of offices or stations, to go out into the communities, to reach as many people as possible. And reach basically is reaching the unreached.
And that's absolutely good to hear. Yeah. And you mentioned that a pilot project has already started. May I ask where the pilot project is?
It's happening in the north, and through their eyes, the project eyes on the ground, and they saw the huge benefit of supporting the women to participate in the Women's Expo, and they never had any particular doubt or reasoning whatsoever, to come on board to support the participation of the women artisans from the north in a big way. It was beyond our expectation for that matter, but we are so grateful for the flexibility in the program, for that to happen.
Now, this is really good for us, and it's exciting to I got a little bit, that's really great. Yeah. I'm pretty excited about it. First time for me to hear of taking these services, especially that of the justice, taking legal advice and specifically targeting it for women and packaging it like so. Now, this also would work also in terms of bringing out more male advocacy. In trying to encourage it a little bit more, wouldn't it?
I think you hit the nerve there, Patheli. I think that is the key intention as well, that we're going to mainstream essential programs, and certainly we'll invite other agencies to come on board and take the service in a more comprehensive, more meaningful manner when you come out to the community. And some of those communities have been somewhat left out. We've seen our eyes on the ground have notified it, and some of them have not been exposed to such service, provision like their counterparts in urbanized areas.
Especially when we're dealing also with our island, our maritime islands, and we seem to be also running out of time here on the show. But just before we wrap up, is there anything else would you like to add on? Regarding the upcoming National Women's Expo, and also with any other issues from the Ministry for Women.
Thank you, Pedeli. Thank you, FBC, for your sponsorship of the Expo and also for this hour. If I may just close this session with inviting all of Fiji down to the Expo next week from the 14th to the 16th of October to own something authentically Fijian. And, there's something in that for everyone, for young people, for children. Digicel is offering Banuve and Maria. They will be there signing autographs. There'll be rights for children. There'll be something for the fathers, the male advocacy. There'll be something for young women, for mothers. So there's something for the whole family. And we checked the calendar. There's no Rugby World Cup games on those nights. So there's no excuse not to come down. Thank you, Pedeli.
Thank you very much.
And I think lastly, Pedeli, there will be a unique facility provided there. Should an exporter, strike a deal with one of the vendors, there is a unique facility provided for them to pursue to really connect up. in a very confidential way.
Definitely a great networking tool for them. Well, thank you again for taking the time to come join me this afternoon.
Thank you.
And that also wraps up this week's Speak Your Mind, Gold FM Speak Your Mind. You can tune in again next week. And don't forget those dates, the 14th to the 16th. It's from 9 in the morning right until 8 in the evening. No rugby matches have been, foreseen by the Director for Women. So make sure you're there. Once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.